Folks, this must be addressed because through all the trade reports, through all the trade rumors that have been going on over the past weeks, months for this Toronto Raptors team, all the tanking graphics that have popped up on different YouTube channels, people calling for the Raptors to lose to maintain that first overall pick. And the reason that the Raptors probably won't have their draft pick for this year if we win a few more games, Jakob Poeltl, with all that being said, he has become criminally underrated. He's just a guy that is an elite center in today's NBA. He does his job, he rebounds well, he plays strong defense, and one stat that gets overlooked, which might have the people rooting for the tank, rooting for the losses, rooting for us to pick up that first round pick. I'm not saying you're wrong for hoping that, but Jakob Poeltl might spoil that party because, frankly, looking at the stats, when he and the player that has frankly been the best player for the Toronto Raptors since the OG Anunoby trade went down, when he and RJ Barrett are out there on the court together, the Raptors are 5-2. And they've won some nice games. Now, obviously, Pascal was on the team for a lot of those wins, and the team looked different, the roster looked different. It's a handful of games, but when Jakob Poeltl's out there on the court, the Raptors have an elite defensive presence. The scoring gets picked up with RJ out there. Obviously, Scottie is still elite, but he's not been playing to the standards he set for himself early in the season. But obviously, now the defense is all focused on him, so he's adjusting to be a number one guy. But Jakob Poeltl is a guy that has a serious impact on winning for this Raptors group, and specifically when he's healthy, because he clearly wasn't he had a little rust on him, when he first came back against the Houston Rockets last week, but Jakob Poeltl, give this man his flowers. So we're going to discuss him, as well as Darko Rajakovic, speaking on the referees, speaking about Scottie Barnes not getting the respect he deserves in the paint. I'll discuss whether or not I agree with it, particularly tonight, regarding Scottie Barnes. But before we dive into that, folks, again, over 56% of our viewers are not subscribed to the channel, and we want to keep you up to date with all the latest Toronto Raptors news, game reacts, all that type of stuff, so keep it locked to Raptors Digest so we can deliver you all the latest Toronto Raptors news. But I already kind of gave Jakob Poeltl's flowers there in the long-winded intro, but Jakob Poeltl tonight against the Houston Rockets, against Şengün, kept this man who's been playing like a monster, been playing like an all-star, been playing like the next Jokic, to 7 points and 7 rebounds, 3 of 8 shooting. He only played 21 minutes, and Jakob Poeltl just did his thing out there when they were matched up out there on the court together. So that was something that was really cool to see. And he himself, 16 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals, 6 blocks for Jakob Poeltl, 4 turnovers, forced the ball a little bit, but 7-11 from the field. Jakob Poeltl is a guy that, again, has just become underrated by the fan base because we all know that it may have been a mistake for the Toronto Raptors. We'll see how everything shakes out. It's not until that pick actually ends up translating, and we'll see if it was a good pick, how this draft goes. It's going to be 5 years down the line before we can really evaluate whether or not this is the right deal or wrong deal, but it didn't look like as much of a home run right now as that trade may have looked a year ago. But Jakob Poeltl, with all that said, first round draft pick, sunk costs, all that said, Jakob Poeltl is still an elite center in the NBA. He does a lot for this Toronto Raptors team. Again, 5-2 when he and RJ Barrett are out there on the court together. I'm happy to have Jakob Poeltl on this team for the long haul. And I've said it here, maybe if the Toronto Raptors, and there are some rumors, some talk, and things like this, I made my voice on it. The Raptors are trying to tank. They need to get rid of Jakob Poeltl. If they wanted to get that pick to convey for this season, it makes sense to deal away Jakob Poeltl at this year's trade deadline, go for the draft capital and things along those lines, because I don't think we're going to keep our pick if Jakob Poeltl's out here playing healthy, playing night in, night out. I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think we're going to be too good. Are we going to be, making a deep playoff run or anything like that? No, that might be a little bit definitely far-fetched. I'm hoping for that. The homer in me is hoping for that, but with Jakob Poeltl in the lineup, we're not catching the Grizzlies, who are now on an extreme losing streak here now at this point. We're not catching the Hornets, the Blazers, or any of those really bad teams in the Detroit Pistons, San Antonio Spurs, or anything like that. We aren't going to be that bad. We're going to get some sneaky wins. And tonight was, again, ugly. It wasn't that great. Down the stretch, we blew a 20-point lead. They brought it back and all that type of stuff. But with Jakob Poeltl on this team, we are not going full out tank. That Raptor down there is not completely dead. Now, are we good enough to make a push in the Eastern Conference playoffs? I don't want to get I don't want to build up my hopes a little bit too much, but we aren't that bad with Jakob Poeltl on this team. That's something I've maintained, and the only reason I've considered, like for the pro tankers out there, I wanted us to properly lose games without a center. Those Raptors teams can properly rack up some L's. But with RJ Barrett, Emmanuel quickly, obviously Scottie Barnes, who's now the number one option, and he is going to get some heat. He is going to get some hate. I already see people in our comment section turning on Scottie Barnes, 2 weeks into him being the number one option on this team. It takes growing pains to grow into that position. Scottie Barnes is going to look bad on some nights. He's an emotional player, so he's going to be frustrated on some nights. That's just how it goes. Do we have to be out here delusional and say, oh, Scottie Barnes is the second coming and this, that, and whatever? No. He's not LeBron. He's not something like that. He's not a superstar just yet. Can he grow into that? Sure. Yes. 100%. But he's not there yet. We shouldn't expect him to be there yet. We should expect growing pains, patience with Scottie Barnes as the number one option. And then a year from now, if there's still the lack of energy on nights like this, the passiveness down at the end of games, then we should be more concerned. But these reps, these games like we see here tonight, where he gets the ball poked loose, where he's missing shots under the rim, and Darko Rajakovic has to call out, the referees at the end of the game. He said this following post-game, I felt there should be a little bit more respect. There should be a little respect level for him and give him a couple more calls. Rajakovic, in a gentle way, is saying Scottie Barnes deserved a few more foul calls down the stretch. He's definitely getting poked. He's still a young player in the NBA. We saw this with DeMar DeRozan especially. When he was a younger guy, he was always getting fired up, always getting teased, never getting any calls. When he was sort of, again, the Raptors were worse then. Might be tough to say because the Raptors haven't been that great, especially over the past, 3 weeks or so. But the Raptors were worse then. DeMar DeRozan probably wasn't the player Scottie Barnes is, at this moment in time. He wasn't getting any calls down at that time, if you recall that sort of stretch. And he grew out of it. He matured. He became a number one option on a team that was the top of the Eastern Conference. Again, was it a playoff picturesque team? We made a conference finals with DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry's the lead guys on the squad. We made some playoff runs with that group. So if DeMar DeRozan could develop to that area, especially where Scottie Barnes has that two-way capability, has that passing vision, has everything on top of it, the three-point spacing we're seeing now from Scottie Barnes, there's no reason we should be concerned or extremely worried with Scottie Barnes having another little bit of a stinker. Not a, shooting-wise, definitely a stinker. 4 of 16 from the field, 0 of 3 from behind the three-point line, only 13 points, but 10 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. He's still doing everything out there on the court. Stop turning on this guy. Stop having such extreme opinions like that. That he's, again, we love getting fired up in these post games and hyping it all up. And I lean into it when we're winning. I'll call Scottie Barnes, this, that, and whatever. But realistically, and again, coming from the biggest homer there is out there, when he's having a bad game, don't just turn on, especially with his age, do what we did to Pascal Siakam. By we, I mean the fan base as a whole. Do what we did to Fred VanVleet, who tonight got a standing ovation. Didn't play for the Houston Rockets tonight, but, got a lot of credit there. Gave love me some Fred. Always appreciate Fred VanVleet. That championship run. Always love the former Toronto Raptors. But, man, don't turn on Scottie Barnes. That's just my take. That's my call to action for people out here now at this point. But Raptors got a pretty solid win in this one. Again, it looked really good for, everything with the exception of the fourth quarter, really. Grady Dick, 2-5 from the field, 2-5 from the three-point line. He's getting some shots. His release looks a little bit quicker. He looks more confident. And again, the one thing about Bruce Brown that I think some people will say, and the biggest hampering on this sort of trade that ended up going down is Bruce Brown, 22 minutes in this one. Again, Bruce Brown might be that guy for the Toronto Raptors in the future. He might be a piece that makes sense long term, depending on how the roster shakes up. Because, again, we have flexibility to sort of make adjustments for this team. But as currently constructed, Bruce Brown doesn't really make a whole ton of sense for this group. It's reasonable to expect him to get traded. All the things we discussed leading into the trade deadline. But the biggest sort of concern, the reason why we dealt away Dennis Schroeder is because minutes availability for the young guys, for the other wings that play similar positions to Bruce Brown. And now, next game, we're going to have Abaji as well as Kelly Olynyk into the lineups. Obviously, Baji actually plays that position. So, it's Jordan Wara's minutes. Only got 7 minutes in this game tonight. Again, how much potentially is 25? Are we super worried about Wara? But I am worried about Abaji getting some sort of run. Oshai, I want to see him actually get some run. And Grady Dick, 20 minutes. Again, had some moments, knocked down a couple shots, was fouled and stuff. There's a lot of minutes taken away from guys that have actually been playing well, so it's not like we're tanking playing the younger guys in development and things, but there's just minutes being taken away from the players that we're developing. Now, an injury happens, then there's zero concerns with that, so maybe it's not that much of a worry in my brain, but Grady Dick, I'd like to see some run, but I don't want to see one of our younger players or our guys that could potentially be future cornerstones if they get some sort of development here at the second half of the season. I don't want to see that limited by Bruce Brown in the future. But again, Bruce had a really solid first half, sold a brutal layup in the fourth quarter of this one. But other than that, looked pretty solid. But I mean, Toronto Raptors, ugly sort of win. It was a good win for the first 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter was kind of a mess. Dylan Brooks, still shocked how he like 20 points in this game. He looks horrible in possessions and then just hits the clutchest baskets on planet Earth. One of the weirdest players I've ever seen watching him. And obviously I root for him for Team Canada. I love the villains out there. I love the heels of the NBA. So I can appreciate Dylan Brooks. I'm not a guy that's anti Dylan Brooks by any means, but I can see why he annoys the entire. Yeah, I'm only annoyed by him when he's playing the Toronto Raptors, but I still love all our Canadians deep down. But folks, let me know what you guys think about this game. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.